people to call people up. Why do you think that is?
I have no idea. I started to wonder if the Pakistani guys spoke very good English, because last year I was in London and I was in a taxi and I was having a conversation with a Pakistani guy who was driving, and I closed my eyes and listened to him speak, and he sounded very posh and very British. So I thought maybe, I don't even know if they are actually English.
Okay.
Or just well educated.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
And now, when you were doing the term deposits, did you transfer online or did you go into a branch? Talk me through how the transfers happened.
Well, I wanted to invest $500,000. I called my bank and they told me my limit was 100,000, and all I needed to do was answer some questions, and they would allow me to do those transfers 24 hours apart. I ended up doing them over, I think, 2 weeks it took to transfer the 500. Yeah.
And then talk me through when you found out it was a scam.
I was driving my car. I not exactly sure how. I know that they didn't call me to tell me that I'd been frauded 500,000. I got a pop-up message. Please call the Commonwealth Bank. Your last payment has been blocked. So I thought I'll give them a call while I'm driving to the physio. I was driving down the freeway, and so I called some poor young guy who happened to answer the phone. Looked me up and then said, "Oh, look, we believe that you've been defrauded, and we're not allowing any more of these payments to go through."
And was that the 5th payment that they...
No, I was trying to make a 6th payment, because I was going to, my whole cash amount of my divorce settlement, I think, was 700, and so I was going to try and transfer 700. So it took them 2 weeks of $500,000, and then all of a sudden, on the 6th one, they worked it out. So I don't understand there either why it took so long.
This is actually really common, by the way. And let's talk a little bit about the money. So you talked about investing, you wanted to invest the money, but I assume that was because you were looking to buy a place, you didn't quite know what was happening with your life circumstances. But tell me how losing that money has changed your life. Like, what impacts has it had?
Well, the idea was to buy a place. I wanted security. I'm getting close, I'm no spring chicken. I just wanted to buy a little apartment and live out the rest of my life, work a little bit, travel a little bit. I just wanted the safety of an apartment or a house, and that was immediately taken away from me. So now I've got nothing. That's the main impact.
And talk about how you work full-time and you run a side hustle as well, right?
Yeah, I have my own business, a travel agency that I've run from home for 15 years. But after this happened, my mental health was so bad, and I became, working from home didn't suit me. So I went and got another job at Capital Group. So now I'm a office manager at one of their sites, and I work full-time there, and then I come home, walk the dogs, and then I do my travel thing at night time.
So do you ever have any time for yourself?
Not a lot.
And let's talk about some of the mental health impacts of this type of crime. So when you first realised the fraud had happened, can you describe physically how that felt in your body?
At first I thought the guy had made a mistake, and then as we kept talking, I realised, oh my God. So I was driving 100 kilometres down the freeway. So I looked for the first exit. I pulled over. I drove into a court, and I just bawled my eyes out, and I just couldn't believe it. It was the worst feeling I've ever had.
Was it worse than the divorce?
Oh, much worse. It was one of the. To say it felt like a death, it's not. It's not like a grief feeling. It's more of a just a total devastation. Oh my God, what's going to happen now? It was like my world was turned upside down in the blink of an eye.
And let's talk about some of the ongoing ramifications of that. So let's talk about how hard it is to sleep, how hard it is to relax.
I don't recognise myself anymore. I have panic attacks. I have constant anxiety. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, major depression. I'm on medication. I would sleep all day if I could. I used to be very social. Now I can't wait to be alone with my dogs. I don't trust anyone. And yeah, I'm just, I make plans with my friends and I cancel them, which then leads to guilt. I'm a bad friend, and just leads to more and more heartbreak. And then in the end, you just wonder why you're bothering, why are you here? What's the lesson I'm supposed to learn in all this?
And some experts I have spoken to do talk about the suicide risk of these crimes. Talk to me about your thoughts around that.
I think about it every day. Up until 2 years ago, the thought has never crossed my mind in 50 years. Now it's constantly on my mind.
Sorry to hear that. Now let's talk about the justice that you can get for this crime. So some people we spoke to said if I'd even had $10,000 stolen from my house, police would have attended. It would be very different to having, hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen.
Your life savings, in my case, yeah.
Tell me about the police reaction to your crime when you first reported it.
The police were pathetic. I'd call, they wouldn't call me back. I went in there and reported it. They just, they write some notes and they did nothing about it.
And then let's talk about the Financial Complaints Authority, AFCA. Tell me how that went for you.
They're probably the biggest joke out of all of this. I feel like there's no point for them to even exist. They're funded by the banks. Every time someone makes a complaint to AFCA, the financial institution has to pay a fine, I think, and that's basically funding their existence. And they didn't help me at all.
So were you able to recover any money?
Not 1 cent.
Now, you've been part of a court case, so maybe open this by saying, I've been part of a civil case that's made, and it has made legal history. Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about it.
Yep.
And how that case came about. So maybe start off with, I did take civil action.
Or should I say that after I lost in the Supreme Court against?
Yeah, you could say that.
So after we lost our case against the NAB in the Supreme Court, the next step for me in my endeavour to gain some kind of justice was to I didn't want the scammer to get away. Oh no, not the scammer. Can I say his name?
You can say Hassan Mehdi's name because the judgment is against him, and that's not illegal or defamatory at all.
Yeah, so I realised once I lost the Supreme Court case that I was not getting any money back. However, my personality is stubborn and a little bit vengeful, and I also wanted to stop this from happening to other people because it's life changing and it happens too often. So I went down the road of suing the company, the sham company, which obviously that was easy. But then I wasn't satisfied. Then I really wanted to ruin the life of Hassan Mehdi, who ruined my life, and stop him from ruining other Australians' lives. So I took civil action against him for breach of his director's duties of his so-called company, which we know is a sham company, Supercheap Securities, and which was totally set up by him for the sole purpose of creating a bank account to funnel fraudulent money. So I don't think that it's fair that he get away with this. So I criminally, what did I say there?
So he hasn't been charged. He was charged criminally.
Yep.
And then the police dropped the
Yeah,
charges.
all right,
I don't
sorry.
understand why that
Okay.
happened, by the way.
They reckon they couldn't find any evidence on his computer because they're lazy. And they, anyway, so
Yeah, so he was jailed on remand,
yeah,
and then they dropped the charges on the day of the court hearing, right? That's how it
Yeah.
worked.
yeah.
And then you took civil action. Is that correct? Is that my correct understanding? The civil action, because you have to let the criminal actions.
The Supreme action was still going on then.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was still going. So he tried to flee the country, and they stopped him. That's how he ended up in prison, and they couldn't find anything on his computer, so they let him go. The police told me there's nothing to see here. They let him go. Anyway, once I lost the Supreme Court against the NAB, I went down the road of suing him for breach of his director's duties, because I was hoping that I could then sue him, bankrupt him, and ruin his life like he ruined mine. And I won that. And then the best part about that is now it's become a precedent, a historical precedent for future victims. So I think people are already referring to it, and that makes me really happy. So although I probably won't get a cent, at least I feel some justice, some revenge, that a message to all these people, these horrible, nasty scammers, that they're not always going to get away with it. And if they come across someone like me that won't give up, they'll end up bankrupt, and now he's got nothing and his life's ruined, and so is his wife and his children. So sucks to be him.
Now, he's been ordered to repay 1.16 million. Have you had any of that money that he's been reordered to pay?
Not 1 cent, which we knew also would happen, but now we're hoping to go down the path of a trustee tracing all of his many years of frauding people, and maybe it might lead somewhere and we might be able to recoup some money and pay back some of the plaintiffs, and that would be very satisfying to get money. Obviously, that's what I'm hoping, that I might get some money back, but more to the point, I just wanted to see this through to the end, to try and change the laws here and try and help the victims, who are always the ones that lose out. The banks win, AFCA wins, everyone else wins, and no one takes responsibility, and it's just a big blame game. It's a bullying game, and innocent people like me don't have the money to follow through. I was told by the NAB, if I didn't pull out of the proceedings, that they were prepared to take this all the way to the High Court and spend up to $1.5 million rather than pay me back $500,000. So what does that tell you? They are desperate to keep winning, and bullying, and that, you know, you can't fight City Hall. That's how it feels.
And the banks bank on that, right? They bank on securitising their costs against you, the victim, who's already penniless, to make sure there's no legal precedent that makes them...
100%. And that's what needs to change, because now there's a little bit of a precedent. There needs to be some law changes, and then this will stop happening, and they'll become more accountable, like they are in the UK and America and Europe, where people like me get all of their money back. Australia is way behind. Obviously, the banks aren't forced to put in place the security levels that they are in other countries.
That's exactly right.
So that's why we're a target, and you know.
And Australians will continue to be targeted while our laws don't work.
Yep.
Now, I crunched some numbers. I don't know if I've sent them to you, but in 2023, we lost $100 per head, whereas the UK lost $34 per head of population. So that's nearly 3 times as much. So we're losing 3 times as much as the UK.
Yep.
Do you wish, in many ways, that you weren't born in Australia?
Well, yeah, the sad thing is that both my parents are English, and I spend a lot of time in England. So, and a really good friend of mine recently told me that a friend of hers bought a house in England and got sent a link to pay her deposit, which was £300,000. She clicked on the link, she paid the money. Of course, it was a scam. Within 2 weeks, she had all her money back from the bank. And here I am 2 years later, haven't done anything as stupid as clicking on a link. And look at me. And yeah, so I mean, there's something very wrong with Australia.
And let's talk a little bit about financially what this means. So you're a woman in your 50s who often don't have as much superannuation as a man. Let's talk about the early access to your super and what that's going to mean for you if you can get the early access to your super. So let's touch on that a little bit.
That's basically, if that were to happen for me, that would be the difference between me being able to keep my apartment and have some security in my later years, as opposed to obviously I'm going to have to sell my apartment if I don't get money from somewhere. So it would mean the world. And I'm pretty close to my reservation age anyway, so
I think it's going to happen. But obviously, Australia's targeted because we have expensive property and valuable superannuation. Not every country in the world has that, or the weak laws. So these companies that run mule accounts, that recruit mules like Medi, they're bigger than we possibly imagine. Do you know, and let's touch a little bit on where the money trail went in your case that your lawyers helped inform you about. Do you know where your money ended up being laundered?
I believe what happened was, as soon as any of the account that I put my money into, in my name, Jo O'Brien, apparently, there were also 9 or 10 other people contributing hundreds of thousands of dollars into the same account. And what we found out was, as soon as the money went in, it went straight out. I think sometimes it went to Dubai, sometimes it went to Pakistan. And it was basically Medi sending the money to his mate Wahid, I don't know, and others probably involved. But yeah, it was going to Pakistan mostly.
And there are anti-money laundering laws in Australia. Why are banks ignoring these laws?
I believe that I thought there was AusTrack. Yeah, I thought that if money came into an account that it had to stay there for 5 days before it went off somewhere else, but clearly they're not in place, those laws. So, yeah.
No one
The,
knows.
the things that go on at the bank are just so wrong. Like my name didn't match the account. They didn't wait any. They didn't even when the CBA was asking me, would I, what would I need to increase my
Limit.
my limit? They didn't even ask me why. What are you doing with this money? No red flags, nothing. And then, they could see money every 2 days, $100,000 going into an account that I was calling Joanne O'Brien. And they can see that it's Super Cheap Securities and the NAB is receiving the money and helping, their client, Mr. Mehdi, steal. And I don't understand why there aren't red flags. Why didn't they stop and think what's going on here? It's mind-boggling to me. It just feels like they broke so many laws and they weren't accountable for any, even in court.
And what role do you think the government has to play in fixing this up? Let's talk about what would you say to the government if they were sitting right there, right now? What would you demand of them?
Firstly, I'd say, I don't want to bag ASIC though.
You don't have to bag ASIC, so you can talk about the politicians. Let's talk about political leadership and politicians, because obviously the laws in our country are the problem, right?
Okay, so what's the actual, what's the law?
So at the moment, it's basically banks. They're introducing these new scam prevention framework laws where they're trying to bring in technology companies like Facebook and Google and the Vodafones and Telstra to all operate under AFCA. That's what they believe is going to help victims get their money back. They're just expanding AFCA's remit to be not just about the banks, but also about telcos. And, a lot of people get done with scam Facebook ads, and that's how they get on the hook. So like you did with the website.
Right.
I don't know who they're going to put on the hook for a website like Money Smart Investments AU, right?
To me, that's just going to delay the AFCA's slow enough as it is. It's already. I've been waiting for my outcome for nearly a year. This is going to take 10 years if they have to go down that track. I would say to parliamentarians, they need to care more about their constituents, and this is a major thing now in Australia. If they really care about the people, the laws have to be changed. I don't know how. I believe the banks should be made to spend billions of dollars to implement the highest level of security that they have overseas to protect their clients. And for a start, and then that would help greatly.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And let's talk about. So there's this concept of justice, which we've touched on, but there's this thing called restitution, and a lot of people think it's just about getting your money back, but it's not, right? So the money is one element that you need, that would change things, right? But what else needs to be acknowledged to help victims like you heal? Because it's the healing, I think, that's missing from here. What could work? I know that's a hard question. But let's think about, so if you got financial reimbursement tomorrow, you magically got your 500K back.
Yeah.
What would that mean for you?
Shall I just spray that fly? Because is it in your way?
Oh, it only comes through every now and then, don't worry.
Oh, it's annoying.
Unless it's annoying you too much.
No. If I got my money back tomorrow, all of my mental health problems would be gone and Joe would be back. That's how I feel. Okay. But yeah.
And did any organisations, any government institutions, did anyone help you? Was anyone helpful? that you had to encounter along this path?
No, they were the opposite. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah, no, that's correct. And then let's talk about taking the battle to the Supreme Court. Did that feel good to be able to do that? Did that give you something, or was it just more stress?
The whole thing was, it was a nightmare. That was the first kind of, you live in this world, you know, in this, I don't know how you'd put it, like, you have hope 1 minute and then there's a hearing and then it gets moved and then it gets changed 2 more weeks and then Medi doesn't turn up, or then it gets delayed another 2 weeks and then Medi says his wife's sick so he can't come to that hearing, and it just goes on and on. And you build during the week when you know there's a hearing coming up, you can't sleep, you stress out, and then your lawyer gives you a call and says he didn't show, you got to wait another 2 weeks, and it just goes on, and it's on your mind 24/7. You just worry. So that went on for a year, and then to lose was completely gut-wrenching. And then you get another, oh, I'll try AFCA. And then that's same again, delays, hope, no one helps. You're calling the police, asking for their help. They don't even return your call. It just feels like which way I turned, I hit a brick wall. And after a while, it gets, it ruins your life. It's become really the only thing I think about now.
And how do you think you'll be able to get past this? Do you think if Medi did pay your money back, that's it, that's the only thing that's going to help you? Or do you think you can find a way to be able to put it behind you?
If Medi gave me my money back, I'd still want him to, I'm still glad that the precedent exists, and mainly that's a good thing. But I still believe that he needs to, suffer. We need some kind of revenge, but also I don't really know what to say.
That's okay. You don't have to say anything. And let's talk about the bullying behaviour of the banks, because NAB, they're particularly resistant to owning any liability. They got themselves summarily dismissed from the case, even though they're the third defendant. What would you say to banking CEOs and the chairman of the board of directors of Australian banks?
I would say to them, I don't know how you sleep at night. You're bullies, you're disgusting humans. You don't care less about your customers. All you care about is making money, and that's always your end goal. And you get away with it because the government allows it. And I just hope in the future that that the law changes and that you guys become more accountable and less worried about your billion-dollar profits, and actually have some empathy and stop pretending you care about your customers, because you don't give a shit about your customers. And
Yeah, I would agree there. So why don't we wrap that there?